And yeah, super stoked you could all join us for the Q&A and got a chance to watch the film. And I guess I'll start by saying, well, my name's Kevin Campion. I'm based out of Seattle, which is where I am right now, and it's raining 38 degrees and raining sideways. Just awesome outside. Not good night to be inside with a film. Not with us tonight is Shawnecee and I's good friend Lindsay Walker. That was an instrumental part of making the film happen. You saw her in the film. She couldn't join us. And yeah, thanks Justin and thanks Friends of the Lost Coast for having us. And Justin, nice work saying Shaughnessee's name. Like people always hiccup on that one. So yeah, just a quick little bit about myself and kind of the organizations that I represent in the world and with this film. This started, I guess you saw the film, so it started with that whale Brian Gisborne saw in 2013 and kind of piqued all of mine and my friends group interest in right whales until that whale was sighted in 2013. I didn't know that we had right whales in the Pacific. They're that rare, and me being a lifelong whale nerd, just have always since I was a little kid been into whales and taught about whales. I still teach about whales, but didn't know we had right whales in the Pacific until Brian found that one in 2013, which swam into Washington State after its time in British Columbia. And from that, me and Shawnecee worked together on the boat at the time, and we all just kind of got really interested in this I don't know, underdog story of the North Pacific right whales. Went on to start asking a lot of questions about them from folks that are also doing whale research or whale stuff in the Pacific, and no one could really give us some solid answers about right whales, about the status, about who was even doing research on them. And so as a few years went on, it became pretty apparent to us that this was a real untold story. And Shawnecee and I had made another film about the Sailor Sea called The Unknown Sea. And so we had this like history of filmmaking, made this film about North Pacific right whales, since got the film out, started an organization called Save the North Pacific Right Whale. So I'm here kind of representing Save the North Pacific Right Whale in the film. That's a very long introduction. Shawnecee, I'll hand it over to you to introduce yourself. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you everyone for having us and for watching the film. My name is Shawnecee Schneider, and I'm in Sacramento where it's in the 50s. Pretty nice. It was nice and sunny all day. I am currently a high school teacher. So I teach film, government, and geography at a public high school in Sacramento, and have collaborated with Kevin for 10 years or so in doing like sailing education work, and mostly just doing documentary work with him. So that's me. And with the film, I came in with a lot of the technical expertise, but we hired some great camera people, and so I was part of the shooting, helping. I was running some the audio, and then producing and directing with Kevin and Lindsay, and then yeah, so a lot of the technical side, but also the sort of creative logistical side as well.
Great. Well, thank you so much to both of you for introducing yourselves and allowing us some time for folks who got to see the film to join us again for the Q&A. And so I did change the settings so that anybody who's interested to ask a question is able to turn on their camera if they're inclined to do so. I'm also monitoring the chat, so people can feel free to put their questions in the chat, and I will convey them from there. But yeah, you can also raise your hand, and we'll do it that way. So lots of ways. Don't be shy. You can unmute yourself and turn your camera on if you so choose. So yeah, I guess. All right, Roby, it looks like you've got a question. Why don't we jump right in?
First, I just wanted to say thank you. It was quite a moving movie, and I felt like you were kind of like witnesses on a like when people go to wars and are witnessing as sort of documenting the horror so the rest of us can be aware and know that something has to be done. So I want to really appreciate that part of your work, because I think it would also be beautiful but also heartbreaking. And I appreciate the education that we got tonight. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
And so we do have a question in the chat regarding have any right whales been tagged yet? And do you know the status of that?
Yeah, hey Susie. Yeah, that's a great question. And so and thanks for your comment. It did there when we were in the Bering Sea, especially in this place where we had our best chance that we're ever going to have in our lives of seeing a right whale and not finding one in that time. It did feel like witnessing the story came to life for all of us in a pretty personal way. And thankfully we're there with our friends to be able to share in that sadness and still have fun in it and in the journey. But there was some sad moments when we're out there. But so for tagging right whales, as you see in the film, there is a huge mystery about where North Pacific right whales go when they leave the Bering Sea and leave the northern Gulf of Alaska, which presumably they do. Well, we know they do in our those northern winter months. So like right now, they're maybe in the southern Bering Sea, maybe in parts of the Gulf of Alaska, but some of that population will leave those northern latitudes and come south. And one of the best ways that we can track a lot of animals now with the newer technology, but historically that we've tracked whales in the last couple decades is with satellite tags. And so there has been 4 satellite tagged right whales or North Pacific right whales. None of those tags lasted for very long. I think 2 weeks was maybe the longest deployment. This was about 10 years ago that they did this. And in those deployments that the right whales they all kind of stayed in the southern Bering Sea. So none of them strayed too far from where they were tagged, which is great data set that shows this place is important to them. But the real awesome what researchers would love to see, and if they were able to, I think the whales would show them this, that they do at times leave those northern latitudes and head south, maybe to California, which we can talk about in a sec. But a whale that could show us where it is potentially interacting with industry, with human activity in a way that is a risk to the whale would be awesome. And having a satellite tag could do that. However, the satellite tags also pose risk to whales, that less so to these big baleen whales that have really thick blubber. But there was a orca whale that died from an infection from a satellite tag 8 years ago or something. And so I think the researchers now, since that happened, they're less inclined to satellite tag a right whale in this really small population, where losing an individual, especially to something like that, would be absolutely tragic. And so there hasn't been an attempt to satellite tag one in about a decade since those 4 were done. And the other reason that there hasn't been one is because there's no dedicated research funds to right whales, and so, or to North Pacific right whales, that is. And so they just don't have the funding for effort like that, even if they did think that it was a reasonable risk to take.
Thank you. That was a great answer.
Thank you. So another question in the chat. Did you have a question? Susie, do you have a question?
No, just thank you for responding. That
Great.
was something we were wondering about.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So there's another question in the chat, which is, were the 6 more whales seen after the voyage Eastern Pacific as described? Are 30 whales enough to reproduce and not go extinct? Do the Pacific right whales frequent the Lost Coast waters?
Okay, so I'll take those in order there. So the The 6 whales that were seen after that voyage, which we just have a little piece at the end of the film, those were all documented in the eastern North Pacific. So we do a little film magic there, in that the whale you see at the very end of the film that's off the Kuril Islands, that's actually from the Western Pacific population. We threw that in there because it's the most beautiful footage that anyone's ever gotten of a North Pacific right whale, and it's a good way to get to see the whale. But those 6 whales that we talked about are from the Eastern Pacific population, and those were off of California, off of British Columbia, and then again in the Bering Sea. And this map that's behind me, if you guys on northpacificrightwhale.org, there's access to this map, and it has all those sightings on it. You can just scroll through and see the year on the sighting. So, and then, do North Pacific right whales frequent the Lost Coast waters? So we don't know that, and like we said, or like I said, that there's this mystery about where the whales go when they leave the northern latitudes. About once every 2 or 3 years, one gets seen off the coast of California, mostly central and southern California. The closest one that's been documented to you all was off like south of Fort Bragg in 1979, and it was a bit offshore. And so there's not great documentation of them using that part of the coast. However, we think, and researchers think, that they're probably there more than they're getting cited and recognized. And there's 20,000 gray whales also. That number, don't quote me on that number, but there's a lot of gray whales that are transiting the coast northbound and southbound every year. And right whales present a little bit like gray whales at sea. And so I know that if I'm on the coast of Washington or Oregon coast and I see a baleen whale, I think, oh, it's a gray whale. And I usually, unless I have a really good view at it, I usually don't think any more about it. And so we think that they're kind of hiding. They could be using these areas and just kind of hiding in that, much larger population of gray whales, and the people just aren't recognizing them unless they happen to see them really close or they happen to know what they're looking at. And so, I don't think they're like that. I don't think they are using near shore areas of the Lost Coast. However, they're probably passing offshore there. So, and I don't know a ton about the Lost Coast, but I'm guessing that there's not a lot of people at sea offshore a lot of the time that are that are more like 20 miles offshore, that sort of thing. So, which is probably where they would be.
Yeah, we have another question, but before we go there, we do have deep underwater canyons just offshore that get pretty close to the shore. So I don't know if that kind of environment. I remember in the film that you were looking for places where there was upwelling from some of these deeper areas, and so are those conditions that would be conducive to right whales?
Probably, yeah, totally, yeah. That's cool.
Great. All right, Molly Tucker, you got your hand up.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much. This was a really incredible film. As someone who's really interested in storytelling, specifically about like Rice's whales in the Gulf of Mexico, which is a very, very similar small population, I was kind of wondering how you chose to kind of tell the story with, the understanding that like the viewer wouldn't be able to see, like wouldn't get the kind of like interaction with North Pacific right whales, and was also kind of wondering like logistically within the filming process, if you started to put together the film after the first voyage, and at what point y'all decided that a second voyage was feasible, and if you were going to go ahead and create the film just based on the first one. Yeah.
Shawnecee, you want to take that one?
Well, I think we just knew that it was so possible to never see a right whale the whole time. But I think that it's, it's like with bad news, you just don't, you try to, or like bad luck, you just never say it out loud. So the whole time we were just like, we're going to see one, and after the first trip, we really felt like, by the end of the first trip, I think we were pretty surprised after the last couple of days of shooting that we didn't see one. And with the opportunity came to go up to the Bering Sea, which Kevin can talk more about maybe some of that, but we just, again, we're just so sure we were going to see one. We're like, this is the time. They're about, they're going to be by Peggy. Like, we have this opportunity is perfect. So I think that the whole time we really thought we were going to, but I think in the end, the fact that we didn't, it almost made it a better, like a stronger story in a different way. Because if we saw one, it's still the same story. It would have just been like this, fluke thing that we got to see one. So I think that either outcome, I think would have still we still wanted to tell this story and really tell like the history of the whale. And it's just hard, if you go to environmental film festivals, if you guys watch nature documentaries, they're sad. They're just like bad news. And I think that there is something there, this is still emotional and, could maybe bring out those emotions, this film, but it's the cool thing is now people know the story and sort of the history of this whale. And I think that will then, people can develop a deeper connection. And I think that was always sort of Kevin's, like, he would talk about it. He's like, people got to know this whale because they'll love it, and how can you not love this whale? It's so cool and weird. But yeah, we definitely started putting some stuff together. The current trailer we have is from the first shoot. So we definitely started cutting something, but I don't, did we think that we wanted immediately to do a second shoot? I think we must have right away.
We got back from that first shoot and we thought we had enough, and I think we kind of did have enough to finish the film. It would have been shorter, and a lot of that, the things you learned about whales in Alaska would have been just from interviews and not from our time up there. But Lindsay, who you see in the film, she used to live on a sailboat in Mexico for a year. A friend of a friend that she had made down there suggested we contact these people that were had their boat up in Dutch Harbor and that would be willing to charter for not too expensive. And really, like, I never thought I'd go on a trip in the Bering Sea. It just seemed, it's like prohibitively expensive. We had talked to a couple like power boats that do research up there, and it was like absurdly expensive to be underway up there. And so I'd never really had it in my mind that it would be an option for me personally, either for the film or me to just go see that place. And then about 2 months before we went, Lindsay started talking to Allie and Carl, and it soon became apparent that this it was kind of like a holy, we actually have to do this. And I think for all of us have done a lot of blue water sailing, but the Bering Sea just has such a reputation that I know all of us were like, just as far as like our comfort level, we're like, oh shit, we got to go now. We have to go sail in the Bering Sea. Like, this is a thing that like is actually an option, and we have to do it to tell the story of the whale. And the whole time making the film, filming it, talking about it, we always knew it wasn't going to be like a nature documentary. We knew even if we saw the whale, we weren't going to get like beautiful footage of it. It would be bumpy. We would be far away, whatever it was. And so we always knew that the film itself would just be about the story of us looking for it, because that was the thing we had control over, and we could map that out. But I always thought until the very last day that we were going to see a right whale, and not because of any sort of math that made that a reasonable assumption, that just in this like being out there with my close friends and this like, we felt so lucky and charmed to be having this experience that there was something in my heart that was like, that's just going to carry over, that we're also going to see this whale that we're looking for. Like, how could we not? And then, so when we didn't, it was like especially heartbreaking. And you can kind of see that in the film, you know, but like Shawnecee said, it let us tell the story in a much more genuine way. Like, these whales are in very desperate way. Like, there's the population is between, Noah's now saying 30 to 50 animals. When we created this film, they were just saying 30. Let's say there's 50 whales. That is like Rice's whale in the Gulf of Alaska, or sorry, in the Gulf of Mexico, like just this insanely endangered population of animals, solely because humans' interactions with them, right? And it's really sad. And having a happy ending of us finding the whale at the end of the film would not have told that story in an appropriate way. Very long answer to your question. Thank you for asking me.
And
Yeah,
where
do
you
you-
did
have you-
see the, sorry, go ahead.
No, have you
Shawnecee.
made any films?
We're in the process of working on one. We're trying to secure funding, and in the meantime, doing what we can from land. We had our first symposium, Rice's Whale Symposium, in November. In 2024, looks like it's going to be a big year for like Rice's Whale outreach stuff. So yeah, we'll keep y'all in the loop as stuff happens. But thank y'all both so much for your answers. They're really beautiful. And thank you so much for all of the work that you've done and the love that you've shown the species. It really shows through and is very powerful.
Thank you.
So before we go into a couple of the other questions in the chat, just dovetailing on what you had said a minute ago. So at the end of the film where, where it looked like you weren't going to find anything, and then on your way out, you came across quite a bit of activity. And I was wondering, I noticed earlier on when you were in the prime habitat and you did the temperature test, that the water was like 10 degrees warmer than it should have been. And I'm wondering if when you came upon, even though you didn't come upon a right whale, when you came upon all the whales that were sort of not where you expected them to be, were the conditions colder there, or did you do a water temperature sample, or do you know why they might have been in that location and not where you expected them to be?
That's a good question. The humpbacks that we saw, like more or less in Dutch Harbor, we didn't do the water temp there. There was way more just bird life and activity right around there. So whether or not the temperature was different, something was different in the ecosystem there that had all those whales there. What's a little bit funny in that those whales, when we left Dutch Harbor, like in the film, you see us get underway, straight away we're into a bunch of whales and birds, and then coming back, we're back into a bunch of whales. It was like the same 100 whales or something, almost in the same spot, and like we didn't really know the area well enough to be like, oh, those whales are going to be there, or to expect to see them or anything. But that, the warmer water that we had in the critical habitat, which was like, it felt like we all brought all our warm clothes to sail in the Bering Sea, as you would, and we just ended up like sailing in like hoodies or t-shirts a lot of the time. It was pretty strange.
Barefoot. I think
Yeah.
people were barefoot.
It was odd, and I mean that's my only time being up there, but I did my research going up well enough to know that was abnormal. And it was, we talk about this in the film, but it was a huge seabird die-off year for the Bering Sea that year. We saw thousands of dead birds at the surface. It was disturbing, like shearwaters and a bunch of different auklets and merlets and that sort of thing. There was a New York Times article about it that it was just a really warm year for the Bering Sea. It really affects productivity. And what it means for right whales that we've since come to learn is that right whales really rely on having water that gets striated by temperature due to ice forming part of the year. And so it's called a cold pool year when you get ice over the whole Bering Sea. or most of the Bering Sea over their critical habitat, and it creates this thermocline, just a boundary between two temperatures of water that collects all the plankton, and it makes it like it takes all the food and it compresses it into one area that makes it easy for them to eat, which is one of the reasons they're there. And if you have a warm water year, which we had the year we were up there, which you know when we measure the water temp, it doesn't allow that thermocline to set up, and so the right whales go somewhere else because the food is just not there as it is in cold years. So we didn't really know about that when we were up there. I've since come to learn about that, but it turns out that that's probably pretty important to where the right whales are. And that you can see in the acoustic data on these warm years, they get acoustic detections from right whales further up towards the Bering Straits than they do on the cold pool years, where they stay more close to the critical habitat in the southern Bering Sea. And so as you can all imagine, the ocean is warming. We're going to have more warm pool years. That's currently not reflected in the critical habitat that's available to North Pacific right whales. And so it's a thing. It's not the thing, but it's a thing that should be thought about in conservation of these guys moving forward, is how these warmer temperatures will affect where they are compared to where they've been in the past.
Thank you. So in the chat, there's a couple more questions. One, do you happen to know if right whales were the type of whale filmed in the movie Whale Rider in the Southern Hemisphere?
Shawnecee, have you seen Whale Rider?
I don't know.
So good. You should watch it. Everyone should watch it. It's really cool. They are about right whales. Yeah. So it's southern right whales, and in New Zealand, there's been a culture of indigenous whaling, as there has been on right whales pretty much everywhere where they occur. It's a beautiful film about human relationship to whales, but yeah, they use right whales in that film.
Thank you.
Great
so
title.
Another question is 30 whales enough for survival, not extinction?
Good question. Like mathematically, no, but there's a couple reasons to be hopeful still, even with that number of 30 whales. And one reason is that they're very genetically diverse even in that population of 30. So generally with a population that size, inbreeding is a huge issue. But I forget someone was just explaining this to me, that the population was reduced so quickly that when it happens like that, you get less, or that the small population maintains genetic diversity. So there's only 30 whales, super bummer, but they're more genetically diverse than you would think, which is a good thing. And the second thing is that although there's this published number of 30, and that's what we talk about, whenever whales get seen outside of the Bering Sea or the northern Gulf of Alaska, they're generally new to the catalog. And so these whales, if you go again on this map behind me, you can see, this is quite confusing, but if you look at the California coast, you can see those whales there. Those are all new to the catalog. And so I think there's this hope that there's a population of whales population of right whales using the North Pacific that isn't reflected in that 30 number, that is maybe that we're just not detecting. And so there's a hope that maybe 30 is a low number for what's actually happening in the ocean, just because they're so remote, these areas that they're living, that they're just not getting detected. And then lastly, my response to that is, like, even if like, we still have to try and do something to have them go extinct without us doing everything that we can individually and more importantly collectively to try and prevent more human caused damage to the population. You think, one, it's illegal with the Endangered Species Act. Two, it would be tragic to lose them without trying everything.
So that makes me wonder, like with when the Soviet Union was doing all the illegal whaling over those 30 years that really decimated the recovering population, were there repercussions for that? And do you have a sense of, what kind of illegal whaling pressure, might still exist in that area or generally?
Yeah, so we don't think that whaling is any sort of issue for right whales now. The Soviets aren't whaling anymore. Japan still is, but just within their territorial waters. They do see there's a population of right whales on the Western Pacific that's about 200 whales, give or take 100. They haven't done that. There's not an up-to-date survey there, and so they see right whales off of Japan. But I think I don't think they would take one. I think they know enough not like the whalers know whales pretty well that I don't think they would do that. However, and there have been no repercussions for any of that, illegal Soviet whaling. By the time that was realized that was going on, that was ancient history politically. An interesting story, but no repercussions. The reason that they, there's still right whales off of Russia and less off of the States is like that Western Pacific population occurs where they occur. It's so foggy and hard to find whales that like the Russians were better at finding them on our side of the Pacific, and that's why our population got so much more hammered than the other side of the Pacific. Yeah.
Interesting. So another thing you mentioned that the IWC photo, most of the photos are credited to the IWC, and it sounded like there might be an interesting story behind, or maybe you can tell a little bit about what that is and why that is.
Yeah. So that photo for this beautiful photo of a right whale that is with the event page. And I suspect that was taken by Jessica Krantz, who's the researcher you meet in the film. Jessica, we don't get to spend enough time with her in the film. She's just been this heroic effort to learn about whales. She's based out of Seattle here and spends months at sea mostly listening to headphones and to these hydrophones to try and locate whales. And the IWC is the International Whaling Commission. They are in charge of whaling worldwide. It's a collection of whaling and non-whaling nations that just make decisions. They have maintained this moratorium on commercial whaling since the 1986 or something like that. So the members, the countries that are now whaling, Japan and Norway, are no longer members of the IWC, and that's how they whale. I might have that a little wrong, but I'm close at least. The IWC is also in charge of whale population status, and so they've been doing these surveys in the North Pacific and Bering Sea that Jess has joined them on. And that survey has been the best effort to find right whales that NOAA has done really in the last decade. And that effort from NOAA is basically just paying Jess's salary while she's out there on this International Whaling Commission voyage. One point of interest is that it's the boat that they charter to do these surveys is the Japan's whaling boat, one of a couple of boats that they use in the rest of the season to hunt whales with. So, which is odd to say the least, I think. But the crew is apparently really good at finding whales. But two, I think it shows that the people at NOAA that are working on North Pacific right whale stuff are so dedicated. They're doing awesome work. They're unbelievably under-resourced and underfunded, so that the things that we know about North Pacific right whales in the last decade are often from Jess's time spent on this International Whaling Commission survey. And they've been really successful at finding right whales a couple of years out there. But, we should have a dedicated, it's one of the rarest animals in the world, not just rarest whales, and we should have a dedicated research, the survey effort that is, epically above what we are doing right now.
Absolutely. Any other questions out there? Please raise your hand or speak up if so. I guess one more question I had was about deep green wilderness, and it sounds like you take youth out and do sort of several weeks out of the sea, sort of teaching youth about the whales, and I don't know. It seems like in alignment with some of the programs we offer at Friends of the Lost Coast, albeit not at sea. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that program.
And thank you for asking about that, Justin. So in my day job, I run this organization called Deep Green Wilderness. We take teenagers, middle and high school students out on the boat that you see at the first half of the film on Orion, from a week up to 3 weeks at a time, learning how to sail and navigation and sort of like how to live on a sailboat, and then also marine biology through the lens of whales and whale conservation. And so every year we do a couple different voyages. We work with classrooms during the school year, but in the summer it's open enrollment, and we're accepting applications for our summer right now. That so if you know a teenager that would be interested in coming sailing for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, either on the Sailor Sea, either out of Seattle and Puget Sound and San Juans, or up into British Columbia to Desolation Sound, send them our way. We have a robust scholarship program, and it's just it's an awesome way to spend it. I love it. We're currently, the boat's in the shipyard right now, so I'm doing the more miserable side of the job. But those summer voyages are very cool. If a high school student thinks they might be interested in marine science, and would like some hands-on experience with that, hands-on experience with spending time at sea, send them our way. Yeah, we have I think 11 spots, 10 spots or something still available for this coming summer. And that's
you can find out more at deepgreenwilderness.org. Is that right?
Yeah, it's deepgreenwilderness.com is the website there. And there's the summer programs link, and you can find the programs there. Yeah, it's how Shawnecee and I met. Is she came to work on board as deckhand and an educator, something like that, years ago. Since done most of the jobs.
Wow, sounds like an incredible program. Last chance. Anybody else have questions here before we wrap things up? If so, now's your chance to say the word or put it in the chat. And seeing there, it looks like we got some good feedback too. Just in general, people shared in the chat how much they enjoyed the film and had never heard about right whales and got to learn about it. So I think that was part of the goal today, was to teach people about this and how to identify these animals. And hopefully this experience spawn them to learn more and tell others about the plight of this incredible creature.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Justin. Thanks, Shawnecee, for nice to see you. And thanks all of you for your interest. Cynthia signed in here, has been enormous. And I guess the last thing I'll say, actually, if I could take another couple minutes, Cynthia's been enormous in helping with this petition to expand the critical habitat that we have going, that we partnered with Center for Biological Diversity on that. And it's asked that NOAA expand the critical habitat. They took a year, they came back and said, hey, we will change it. We might not expand it, but we want to change what the critical habitat looks like for these guys. It's been an ongoing thing. Keep your eyes out for ways that you can comment. There'll be a couple, at least one other, maybe two other comment periods that are open where you guys can say, hey, I learned about right whales. Turns out they're really important. I love them. Help save them by expanding critical habitat or funding the recovery plan or whatever it is. So keep an eye out. Shout out to Cynthia for doing an immense amount of work and with that petition. So Cynthia, I see you out there. Thank you for that. And thanks to Friends of the Lost Coast. I'm I spent a lot of time on Google Maps looking at where you all live. It looks so cool. I really want to come visit. Maybe we can do some sort of live event, or I can come down and just check out your facility. You know, that these whales are intimately tied to the health of the Pacific Ocean, and the health of the Pacific Ocean is intimately tied to the whales. And same with the shore and the ecosystems that connect to that shore. And you know, that saving these whales means saving the North Pacific and all the environs that are connected to that. So really cool what you all are doing. And yeah, just thank you for taking the time to learn about these guys tonight.
On behalf of Friends of the Lost Coast and the Bureau of Land Management King Range National Conservation Area, thank you for tuning in to Lost Coast Lectures. To view the complete archive of recordings from this series, or to learn more about our work inspiring a passion for nature, visit Friends of the Lost Coast online at lostcoast.org.